The rain had been falling for hours, drenching the streets and washing away the noise of the city. For most, it was a gloomy evening. For Emma, it was just another reminder of how small and invisible she had become in a world that once felt warm. She stood under a flickering streetlight, her old backpack pressed tightly against her chest, filled with everything she still owned, a few clothes, a cracked phone, and a photo she couldn't bring herself to throw away. The buses had stopped running hours ago, and she had nowhere to go. Her shoes were soaked, her fingers trembling from the cold, and her stomach growled with a dull ache she'd grown used to ignoring. The world felt too quiet, too empty, too cruel, and she wondered when, exactly, life had decided she no longer deserved a break. There was a time when she laughed easily, when home was more than a word, when love didn't feel like a memory. But that time was gone, and all she had now were long nights and empty streets. If you believe that kindness and second chances can still change lives, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to MJ Kindness Moments. Your small act of support helps spread light in a world that desperately needs it. Emma had once been a promising art student, full of dreams, full of color. Her sketches had won contests, her teachers said she would go far. But life has a way of painting over your brightest moments with shades of gray you never saw coming. Her mother had fallen sick during her final year of college. Emma dropped out to take care of her, working shifts at a diner, selling her paintings online, doing anything she could. But when her mother passed away, the house was gone within months. Debts piled up. Friends drifted away. Dreams quietly folded into boxes she'd never open again. Tonight wasn't new. It was just another night of surviving. She had tried the shelters, but they were full. She had applied for jobs, but her worn-out clothes and unsteady voice didn't make great first impressions. She had stopped believing that people would stop long enough to really see her. So when a car slowed near her, she instinctively took a step back, clutching her bag tighter, ready to be ignored again. The window rolled down, and a middle-aged woman leaned out. She had kind eyes, the kind that seemed out of place in a world that no longer looked people in the eye. "Hey," the woman said softly. "Are you okay?" Emma nodded quickly, the automatic light tumbling out before she could think. "Yeah, I'm fine." She wasn't. And for some reason, that made her eyes sting. The woman didn't drive away. Instead, she parked the car, got out, and stood beside her under the rain. "You look cold. Let me help. I run a small cafe down the street, it's closed now, but I can open it up for a bit. You can dry off, maybe have something warm." Emma wanted to refuse. She had learned that kindness often came with conditions. But something in the woman's tone, gentle, patient, real, made her nod. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was hope, buried under all her fear. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and coffee. The woman, who introduced herself as Laura, handed Emma a towel, a steaming mug of hot chocolate, and a smile that didn't ask for anything in return. Emma sat quietly, watching the steam rise and blur her reflection in the cup. She didn't remember the last time someone looked at her like she mattered. Laura didn't pry. She didn't ask for a story, a name, or a reason. She just talked about small things, her cat, her love for baking, how the city looked more peaceful in the rain. And slowly, the silence between them began to feel safe. Emma found herself speaking, haltingly at first, then with a rush of words she hadn't said aloud in years. She talked about her art, her mom, her lost home. And when she finally stopped, she expected pity. Instead, Laura said something she never forgot: "You haven't lost everything. You're still here. And that means there's still more to your story." For the first time in a long while, Emma cried, not out of pain, but because someone's kindness had touched the part of her that still wanted to believe life could be beautiful. The next few days blurred together like soft rain. Laura let Emma help around the cafe in exchange for food and a little money. It started small, wiping tables, washing cups, sweeping the floor. But every day, Laura found ways to make her feel needed. "You have a good eye," she'd say when Emma arranged pastries in the display. Or, "You should paint again. The world needs artists like you." At first, Emma laughed it off. But late at night, she found herself sketching on old napkins, rediscovering the rhythm of her own hands. She began painting small canvases, simple ones, a sunrise, a steaming mug, a woman smiling behind a counter. She didn't notice that the regular customers were starting to ask who painted the pictures that now hung on the cafe wall. Weeks passed, and the little cafe began to change. People came not just for coffee, but for the feeling, that quiet, warm space filled with gentle music and stories written in color. Laura's kindness was contagious, it spread like light through fog. She let local kids sell crafts in a corner of the cafe, gave leftover pastries to the homeless shelter, and treated everyone as if they belonged. Emma became part of that magic without realizing it. Still, a part of her hesitated to believe it would last. Kindness, she had learned, was fragile. But one evening, as the sun dipped low, Laura sat across from her and said, "You've been helping me so much. I want to return the favor. There's a community art event next week. I've already signed you up." Emma froze. "Laura, no, I can't. I'm not ready." Laura smiled. "You don't have to be ready. You just have to show up." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. Fear gnawed at her, fear of failing, of being seen again, of being reminded how far she had fallen. But when the day came, she stood behind a small table covered in her paintings, her hands trembling, her heart pounding. The park was alive with laughter and music. Children ran between booths. Strangers stopped to admire her art, to ask questions, to see her. A woman bought one of her paintings, a portrait of a rainy streetlight, and said it reminded her of hope. Emma smiled, realizing how full circle life could be. By evening, most of her paintings had sold. Laura walked up behind her and said, "Told you people needed your art." Emma turned, eyes shining. "I didn't think kindness could feel like this," she whispered. "It's overwhelming." Laura shook her head gently. "That's because real kindness doesn't ask for anything. It just reminds you who you really are." The cafe became something more in the months that followed, a place of healing, laughter, and second chances. Emma painted murals on the walls, each one a story of someone who had walked through those doors broken and left a little more whole. She taught free art classes to kids who couldn't afford them. She helped organize food drives and fundraisers. And though her life was still far from perfect, she had found something she hadn't even known she was looking for: purpose. People began recognizing her name again, not as the girl who lost everything, but as the woman who helped others find light in dark places. And every time she looked at Laura, she was reminded of that night in the rain, of the moment her life quietly shifted from surviving to living. But what Emma didn't know was that Laura had once been in her shoes, too. Years ago, she had lost her husband and nearly her will to keep going. Someone had helped her once, a stranger who offered her a job at a cafe and taught her that healing begins with a single act of kindness. That's why she had stopped that night, why she couldn't drive past a girl alone in the rain. She knew the look of someone who had forgotten their worth. The story came full circle the following winter when a young man came into the cafe, drenched, lost, and hungry. Emma saw herself in him, the same hollow eyes, the same quiet hopelessness. She didn't hesitate. She smiled, poured him a cup of hot chocolate, and said, "You look cold. Let me help." That night, as snow fell softly outside, Emma realized that the kindness that had once saved her had now become part of who she was. It wasn't just something she received, it was something she could give, endlessly, without losing any of it. She had become a living proof that a single act of compassion can echo far beyond the moment it's given. Because sometimes, life doesn't need to be fixed. It just needs to be met with kindness. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Subscribe to MJ Kindness Moments to keep spreading stories that remind us of hope, humanity, and second chances. Speech balloon special request. Before you go, comment below, kindness feels like hope, to remind someone else watching that they are not alone. As the lights in the cafe glowed softly against the snow, Emma looked around, at the laughter, the warmth, the art, and thought about how strange life was. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can rewrite a whole life story. And she never expected kindness to feel like this.